You are listening to the Beltway Wars Invitational Podcast, hosted by Adam Jackson and Patrick Wilton. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Week 4 recap for your Beltway Wars Invitational Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Patrick, he's Adam. All right, let's get it rocking and rolling here. Hopefully we'll do a little bit better. We'll perform a little bit better than the Ravens did on the field. We're making it a habit to begin these podcasts by reflecting and lamenting and crying and being all depressed about the state of this team right now.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you to start, and I want to ask if you'd like to retract any of your Lamar Jackson love letter that you gave to the league a couple podcasts ago.
Absolutely not. He is still amazing. I did say in the Week 3 recap that Steve Spagnuolo really knows how to game plan for Lamar. That was the case in this week rather. So I was kind of expecting lower numbers. Now I didn't expect it to be that low. I thought it was going to be, and I actually did say it was going to be a lower scoring game actually. So the defense did not hold up their end of the bargain on that one. The defense has just been atrocious. I don't think anyone really saw that coming. Jobs are being discussed in terms of defensive coordinator or Zach Orr. So the Ravens are in a transition. It looks like it's going to be Cooper Rush this week, starting for the Ravens against Houston. That seems like could be a little bit of a trap game. Most of us will be there this Sunday in person. We will make sure to drink heavily beforehand so we don't have to suffer through another loss if they do actually lose that game.
Yeah, we'll see if Tom shows up with the Blackberry, the Jack Blackberry.
That's a call out right
No,
there.
Crown Blackberry.
You hear that,
Jack,
Tom? We were expecting some Crown there, I think.
I'm not asking if I'm driving. I'm just gonna say this right up, like I'm DDing this time. So Tom, I'll just tell you, like I maybe one, but I can't promise anything. I got to save room for some espresso shot at the end. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Speaking of Steve Spagnuolo, man, pay that guy whatever it takes to get him here to be the defensive coordinator for this team. That guy is just he learns. He's been in the league for a long, long time. He's been a head coach, I believe, with the Giants, but defensive coordinator is his role in the NFL. He does it better than just about anyone, and he can game plan for a specific team better than anybody I have ever seen.
I don't know. Mike McDonald. Wish he could have stayed around. He looked pretty good, but suffice to say, he wasn't going to stay. Yep.
All right. Well, prior to getting into the games, we did have the first trade made before Week 4. We did have Jake and his Prairie Wolves trading wide receiver Ricky Pearsall, who was his 7th round pick in this year's draft, to Mike's Clown College for running back who has assumed the lead back role for Arizona. That would be Trey Benson. He was the 12th round pick for Mike. And this is kind of all brought on by James Conner's injury, right? You draft Trey Benson, you keep him on your bench. James Conner gets hurt. Trey Benson becomes the guy. He becomes expendable to some degree for Mike. He was able to address the need at the wide receiver position. Jake was able to address the running back position. Just wanted to get your reaction to this trade. I don't know if you have either of these two teams pulled up. I think it generally seemed like it was a pretty good deal for both teams. It was just kind of one of those good pairings in terms of two owners, two managers that got together and made a deal. For whatever it's worth, Benson outscored Pearsall 7-6 this week, but wanted to get your early reaction to this week prior to Week 4 trade.
Yeah, I think it was as even as you can kind of get, kind of unknowns with how Trey Benson's going to look as the lead role, and then Ricky Pearsall as well. Very good in a limited passing attack that San Francisco has. They have injuries. Brandon Ayuk, I don't know when he's coming back. Also, Juwan Jennings was also dealing with injury, even though he played in this one. George Kittle as well, also out for San Francisco as well. So, first week observations, though, both of them did not do very well. Didn't really pay off for each team, as I believe that each team lost this week. So, I'm kind of liking a little bit more, how I feel about running backs. Having a lead back is a premium in this league, Trey Benson. So I expect better things out of Benson. Ricky Pearsall, he is, probably the number one on that team right now. So better days ahead for both players, but I think I lean a little more towards the Trey Benson side of that deal.
Very interesting. That's leaning toward the 12th round pick there over the 7th rounder. By the way, both of these players did come out of week 4 with injuries. Trey Benson did actually get injured in this game. There's no update on Sleeper right now, but there are some updates floating around the injury. It seems like it's a day-to-day injury. Pearsall as well did suffer an injury. He is not practicing on Tuesday. He is questionable to play. He has the Thursday game this week, so not an ideal situation at all for Mike and his new acquisition in Pearsall. So with that, let's get into the games. And Adam, we are going to start off with your team because you did have the highest score this week with 161.66, getting the win over the Columbia Clown College with 118. You did get a massive day from Dak Prescott, your quarterback. Another fantastic game. I believe it was the highest scoring tie in NFL history, 40-40 versus Green Bay, 30.96 fantasy points.
And I think the highest scoring scorigami of all time either.
Very nice. Okay, very nice. Interesting game there for sure. Dallas has been involved in a couple shootouts this year. Nice to see if you are rostering Dak Prescott as you are. Nice to see Ashton Jeanty. Finally, the Raiders using him the way that everyone wanted him to be used for the first couple weeks. So he does explode with 32.5 fantasy points. Tyreek Hill, I'm not going to mention him here. He did suffer a gruesome injury. We'll talk about him a little bit later on. But otherwise, Travis Etienne continues 19 carries, 124 yards and a touchdown. Staving off that kind of surge from Bashal Tutin behind him on the depth chart. The Texans, notable here for a very nice game, a shutout versus Tennessee for 16 fantasy points. You certainly did not escape this game without unscathed here.
No.
We mentioned Tyreek Hill, but Braylon Allen did suffer a knee injury here that didn't look great. He's likely to land on IR with an MCL sprain, so not a good situation there. This is in addition to George Kittle, who continues to be on the shelf for you here. I believe he's going to be coming back in a couple weeks, right? Was he placed on IR?
Yeah, he'll be back not this week, but next week.
Okay, so good news there. Very banged up San Francisco team right now. So those are kind of the notable things, Adam, but give me your beast this week for your league leading team in week 4.
Yeah, so I mean it has to be Jeanty here, Ashton Jeanty. I did say in the podcast last week that I did expect him to come around here, and boy does he deliver in week 4. 32 points on 21 carries, 138 yards, 6.5 yards per clip. An interesting thing that I kind of heard on the Twitters or X's, whatever you want to call it, was that he went back to more of his his stance of being, directly standing up that he was very successful with in college more than what the crouch down. I thought that was kind of interesting there, which he does that and he explodes for this. But he looked great. He did have an early fumble in this one. They showed that they're not going to go away from him. They're not going to punish him for fumbles, and he really delivered in this one. Would still like to see him be more involved in the passing game. Only 2 catches, but does have 2 touchdowns receiving this week. So want to see more of that just to keep his floor a little higher. But obviously, this is what I expected when I drafted him, and, the next couple weeks, Indianapolis, Tennessee, and Kansas City, 2 of these 3 weeks are expected to be an at least running script. Oakland, or not Oakland, Las Vegas being that. So I'm expecting good things now, running back number 13 on the season.
Yeah, 85% snap shares for Genty this week. Zamir White, I believe, did not play, or at least he did not have any snaps. Dylan Lawby behind him, 0 snaps. Raheem Mostert was the only other running back to get snaps in this one, which is a change from previous weeks when at least 2 other running backs got snaps. So definitely a nice percentage of the workload for Genty. That's what you expect when you draft him as high as you did, and you certainly saw that payoff in week number 4.
Yep.
Okay, give me your bust this week.
So my bust is going to be DJ Moore. You're seeing his snap percentages. You're seeing it in the 80s, 90s. You saw him in the 70s here. Not moving in the right direction now on week 5 by this week. Now, wide receiver number 40. I was really expecting when I drafted him to be that Amon-Ra St. Brown type of player in this Ben Johnson offense. That is not the case. It looks like it's more Rome Odunze for this offense. Just 5 targets, 6 targets, 5 and 5. Not really getting many targets, not really getting many catches, many opportunities. Just been really disappointing all season, and that disappointment continues in week 4.
Yeah, again, looking at snap share, you actually had Olamide Zacchaeus behind him, who had his highest snap percentage of the year at 60%. So the third receiver in the pecking order there did notch his highest snap share of the season.
Could be a guy on the move. I would not be surprised if they try to move him near the trade deadline. So that could be interesting for his value.
You're talking about DJ Moore.
DJ Moore, yep.
Of course, yep, because there is Luther Burden, the third waiting, who has flashed already this young season. Okay, well, Adam, the fantasy gods giveth, the fantasy gods taketh away. Your squad hit its stride this week, scoring more than 150 points, more than 160 points. But Tyreek Hill leg snapped in half on Monday Night Football, and his season is over. He has not played up to his round 4 value yet this season, but it's still hard to sugarcoat this for what this means to your team. So how are you feeling about the rest of your season given this injury to your – what is it? When did you draft him in the 4th round?
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. Not just because of, he's kind of been up and down a little bit. I like the way he was progressing. His target share was going up as the weeks went on. He looked really good at the beginning of this one as well, before that unfortunate injury. But the more important thing is what's behind him. I mean, I have nothing in terms of wide receiver. Wide receiver was one of my weaker positions coming out of the draft. Now I'm running with DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, and who? I mean, Calvin Ridley, we know his struggles. Christian Kirk is kind of the second, third wide receiver on a bad Houston team. And Trey Tucker seems to kind of be that boomer bust type of wide receiver. So not many options at all. And I am extremely concerned that the wide receiver position will be my downfall for the season.
Okay, moving over to the losing side, that would be Mike, who takes his first loss of the season. He moves to 3-1, scores 118 points in this one. Didn't really get the kind of production that he's been getting in his 3-0 start. He does continue to get James Cook dominating carries, dominating everything on the football field for the Bills. He rushes 22 times for 117 and yet another touchdown. You had Garrett Wilson for a 3 out of 4 games, 17 or more fantasy points. He had 17.2 this week. You're continuing to get production out of your flex spot with J.K. Dobbins at 16 carries for over 100 yards. And you're getting production on the bench. This is why Mike traded Trey Benson, because even starting 3 running backs here, J.K. Dobbins in the flex, he still has Javonte Williams on the bench with 17.5 on 20 carries. There is some thoughts that Jadon Blue may be get his first action of the season, who probably is a more electric runner. He's certainly younger, a rookie there for the Cowboys, but Javonte Williams continues to play very well. The only other real thing of note on the bench is Dallas Goedert, who scores 2 touchdowns in this one. It's right. We've talked about the Eagles' wide receiver struggles early this season. I'm sure we'll talk about it in this podcast. But Goedert, 4 for 4, 37 yards, and 2 scores. Not that he's going to be playing over Brock Bowers, but certainly nice to have 2 tight ends that you can rely on any given week. So let's start with the beast for Mike's team in week 4. I keep getting the weeks wrong. It's week 4 already.
Good. So my beast is going to be continuing with James Cook. I don't think anyone really saw this season coming. You saw last year where he did score 16 touchdowns on the ground. The touchdowns continue to come. At least one touchdown in every single game thus far. Now running back number 1 on the season after 4 weeks. Has 117 yards in this one. 5 yards per carry. Some involvement in the passing game, but he's continuing his dominance from last year in terms of scoring touchdowns. It doesn't even matter that Josh Allen runs them in. James Cook still gets his work as well. So good on Mike for seeing it, because a lot of the fantasy pundits were saying that he was a do not buy before the draft. You said you can't keep up with these touchdowns that he had last year. Well, he is keeping up with the touchdowns, and they're using him. And there's not really any competition for carries in this offense. Ray Davis, Ty Johnson gets a little bit of work, but nothing too much. He is the number 1 running back in a very, very powerful offense.
Even better to see, perhaps even than the touchdown, the continued dominance getting into the end zone. But he did notch his highest snap percentage with 73%. Not only this year, going back to week 16 of 2023. So
wow.
Highest snap share in 2 seasons for James Cook is certainly very welcome news for Mike.
For sure.
Okay. So I guess the question, given that Mike's receiving
hold on.
room,
we haven't done a bust yet.
Oh, we haven't done a bust yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll get better at this. I promise. All right.
You're doing great. Everyone, give a like for Pat on the podcast. He's doing absolutely fine.
All right. Give me a bust.
So my bust is going to be Brock Bowers. It kind of seems like, there's a lot of changes in this offense from last season. You had Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell last year, really peppering him the ball week in and week out. Looking at his targets, it's not the same as it was last year. I mean, last year you're seeing 13, 14, 16 targets, and now his highest target share is 8. So, we're seeing a little like digression from what he was last year. Still scoring, somewhat good points, but hasn't been in the end zone this year. Now tight end number 11. When you draft a tight end that high, he needs to be in that top 3, and he has been disappointing thus far, only having 1 game over 50 yards receiving in 2025. So he is my bust this week, and I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about where he was drafted in his production. Now, you're starting him every week, but you're not getting the value that you drafted him at, and the expected, value that you were expecting to get from Brock Bowers.
For sure. I agree with the concern on Brock Bowers. You drafted him way too high to not be getting elite production out of your tight end spot. I did want to mention and talk a little bit about the wide receivers here. We mentioned Garrett Wilson had a nice game, but Ricky Pearsall struggled, was injured here. Jamison Williams continues to just not quite be. 8 targets is great, but 4 fantasy points is not. And then the bench receivers continue their struggles. I mean, Travis Hunter, it's just typical, 5 fantasy points. Chris Godwin did get 10 targets. He's probably going to be relevant, but it's hard to start him until you see it. And Darnell Mooney, 2 points in this one. Despite the Falcons having a really good offensive game, Darnell Mooney really struggled. So given the weak wide receiver room here for Mike, he's got 4 solid running backs. He's got a tandem of top tight ends. Does Mike need to make another trade to bring in yet another wide receiver here? I think he has the goods to do it. What say you?
It's interesting. Do I think he needs to do it? No. I think that you can slide in Godwin, the next couple of weeks. I think that he's going to be good. You slide him in for Jameson Williams. If you want to move Javonte Williams, I think that is the time. I think the time is now. I don't think his value is going to get much higher than what it is right now. Running back number 6. Can you get a wide receiver 2 in fantasy for him? That would be really, the question there. I don't know if you can. But I think this team's okay. Godwin, you love to see 10 targets in his first action. I mean, that's just great. Baker Mayfield's going to look for him. Now, what does that look like when Mike Evans comes back? That's also another question. It's kind of crowded there now with Godwin, Evans, and Buka there as well. Bucky Irving's going to get his looks in the passing game too. So it might get a little crowded, but I don't think you need to make a move. But again, if you were to, I don't think Williams' value is going to get any higher than it is right now.
Okay, well, let's move over to our next matchup here. We have Dustin and the Berlin Banshees taking down the Timonium Neon Trees in one of the closest matchups this week. 155-52 to 149-64. Very close, a slugfest between Dustin and Brian. Dustin does get the victory to move to 3-1. He is now top of the leaderboard in the standings. He gets production all over the place. He gets it from Bijan Robinson continuing to do what he has done so frequently. He is the number 4 running back now. He's really got top 5 options across the board here. He's got Drake May, who's a top 5 quarterback. He's got Bijan Robinson, a top 5 running back. He got an incredible day from Drake London, bouncing back from kind of really 3 rough outings to begin the year. 10 targets, caught 8 of them, scored a touchdown there for the Falcons. Continuing to get production out of Devontae Adams from rookie tight end Tyler Warren, who's a top 5 option at the position. Khalil Shakir coming through with the touchdown in this one in the flex spot. Butker and the Broncos both in double digits. So really, really nice game. And oh, by the way, don't sleep on Kenneth Gainwell for the Steelers, filling in for Jalen Warren, 28 fantasy points. It's going to be very hard to put that genie back in the bottle after a 19 for 99, 2 touchdowns, caught all 6 of his targets for an additional 35 yards. Everything seems to be going right. Oh, by the way, Jalen Waddle, I called it out in the group chat the other day after Tyreek Hill snapped his leg in half. Waddle is going to become the top target getter in an offense that was once thought to be a kind of a deep field, down the field passing offense.
Yeah.
So a big win here for Dustin. He moves to 3-1. He's top of the standings. Let's talk about who performed really well as a beast for Dustin.
I mean, you kind of said it here, and Drake London really has his breakout performance of 2025. 10 targets, 8 catches, 110 yards. This is exactly what you were looking for when you drafted him this high. Also scores his first touchdown of the season. Michael Penix looks for him. Darnell Mooney did leave this one with a hamstring injury, so that's just more targets for him. I think Michael Penix is going to have more good days than bad days, just with this offense, him getting more comfortable. But, this is exactly what you want to see. He is on bye next week, so that kind of hurts, but you have a lot of interesting matchups weeks 6 through 8. Buffalo, San Fran, and Miami. All these offenses have the capability of scoring a lot of points, which means that Atlanta's going to have to throw the ball a lot. So you'd like to see that. You'd like to see the 10 targets. He is my boom for week 4.
Nothing to add there. No notes, as the kids say. Let's move over to the bust for Dustin this week.
So not a lot of options here with the amount of points he scored, but Kyron Williams just kind of weird. 68% snap percentage, does lose a fumble in this one. You do have Blake Corum back there. Is this something where it becomes more of a split? 13 carries, which was his lowest of the season against Indianapolis, which was a very close game. So still 6 yards per carry, but didn't really do too much with it with the only 13 attempts in this one. His lowest score of 2025. So I'm not ready to jump ship on him yet, but you want to see that snap percentage in the 70s and 80s, not in the 60s. So he is my bust for week 4.
Okay, we talked last week, Adam, about James Conner and losing James Conner for the season, who Dustin curiously is still rostering and not even in an IR slot, which is interesting. But you wouldn't know that he lost Conner by looking at this team. Dustin's team continues to look like a really dominant force in the league. I, frankly, just like you kind of alluded to, I continue to have a hard time poking really any holes in this roster. Is there anything to be concerned about here for Dustin that you can poke holes in anything that he's done assembling this roster?
I mean, the Kenneth Gainwell breakout really changes this conversation because, we were kind of concerned about, kind of the depth chart issues here. But if he is the number one back in a Steelers offense, then watch out because he has so many options. And by the way, Rashid Rice just sitting there on the bench as well. That's going to be coming back in a couple weeks. I mean, I'm not as high on Waddle as you appear to be, but it doesn't even really matter because you could just throw Shakir in there if you wanted and have Gainwell in the flex spot. And then when Rice comes back, you could be running London, Adams, and Rashid Rice. My goodness, that is scary. So I think right now, not to jinx Dustin at all, but I think he is the front runner of the league right now to secure his first ever BWI championship.
Oh, don't jinx him this early. Goodness gracious.
I have to.
Yeah, well, you play him next week.
Yes.
So.
Without Bijan Robinson, so I might have a chance, and Drake London, so I might have a chance.
And Drake London. That's right. Okay, the losing side here, really tough loss for Brian, man. He moves to 2-2, still in fine position, number 5 in the standings. But he does take the loss here, despite scoring 149 points. That's just brutal. Bo Nix has a nice game. Is that 2 in a row for Bo Nix? No, it's not. It is his best game of the season. He was QB5 on the week. He had a really nice game.
Yeah.
Bucky Irving continues to do his thing. 15 carries, scored a touchdown, caught balls for 102 yards, just crazy running back things. Does have kind of a mysterious ankle injury that they are getting. He's getting an MRI today. We don't have the results yet. David Chow, the excellent Twitter doc for the NFL, did not seem to be very concerned about the MRI situation there. But further production throughout the wide receiver room, Justin Jefferson, Quentin Johnston, Rome Odunze, all 14 or more fantasy points. Quentin Johnson just doing crazy things, coming out of nowhere. The number 4 wide receiver, 11 or more points in all 4 weeks. He was a waiver wire find, right? Or was he drafted?
He was drafted.
Did we talk about that? He was waivers.
Oh,
$11 on waivers.
After week 1.
So that, at the end of the year, we always give out our kind of awards, our superlatives, and he is a early season favorite for the best waiver wire acquisition. Of course, we do favor guys picked up earlier in the season, right? Because you get more value out of them if they turn out to be good. On the bench, not a lot to speak about. Mike Evans continues to be on Brian's IR. He's not on the NFL IR, but you should get him back in a few weeks. Chris Rodriguez, maybe interesting guy to note for the Commanders.
Yeah.
He was the most effective back. It's kind of a terrible 3-way split here, but he does get 59 yards here on 7 carries. So the most efficient of the backs right now, might be in for more workload. But let's look back at this starting lineup. And again, many options to choose from, but let's start off with the Beast.
So, I mean, we kind of mentioned him, but it has to be Quentin Johnston. I mean, he had all these concerns last year about the drop passes, not being on the same page with Justin Herbert. That is gone for now. Through the first 4 weeks, has scored double-digit points in each of those games. 13 targets, which is his most of the season for any individual game. 98 yards, also a season high. Also season high in catches. So, really pointing up. I don't think anyone saw him being the number 1 option there for San Diego. I know that, or not San Diego, for LA. I know Scott didn't because he picked Ladd McConkey, and that is a discussion that we're probably going to have. But he is the number 1 option there, and an offense that is throwing the ball more than it did last year. So that's an interesting tidbit there. I don't foresee how this train really stops, and he's showing why I believe he was drafted in the first round in 2023. So the investment from the Chargers is paying dividends now. He is wide receiver number 4, and he is my boom for week 4.
Absolutely, and kind of has this reputation as a downfield threat, but he does get 13 targets in this game, so that kind of breaks the mold of just being a downfield threat. Also breaking the mold is the fact that he is just 6 snaps shy of Ladd McConkey for the team lead this year through the first 4 weeks. 236 for McConkey to 230 for Quentin Johnson. Keenan Allen, a distant third at 177. So definitely getting the work, getting the playing time, and incredible ad early in the year for Brian. Okay, let's talk about who is the bust for this team this week.
So the bust is even in the green, but I feel like we talk about him every single week, and I think that we need to continue to talk about him because I think the situation is rapidly changing, and that would be Pacheco here. He does score his first touchdown receiving, but he had a plus matchup in this one against a decimated Baltimore defense. Only 7 carries in this one in a game that they were leading for most of the game, 35 yards. But the thing I want to pay attention to, 37 snap percentage. They are moving away from Isaiah Pacheco. I think that they're starting to understand that he is not what he was seasons past. And, you know, an interesting name to kind of think about that's starting to get a little more work is Brashard Smith, who's a rookie at SMU. So he's getting a little more work. Kareem Hunt's getting work. You also have Elijah Mitchell there as well. I don't know if he really did anything. He wasn't even active in this one, but he is still a name that they might want to explore as well. Really concerned, drafted in the 5th round, not what you want to see, trending in the wrong direction. Now running back 41 on the season. He is my bust for week 4.
Yeah, Brashard Smith's just 26 snap percentage, 26%, but that does double his previous high this year of 13% in week 1. So things looking up for Brashard Smith. Could be an interesting guy to consider for teams moving forward. I don't believe he is rostered yet. Okay, so Brian's team, tough luck loser in week 4, concerns at QB and overall depth. We've talked about both of these position groupings for Brian before. They continue to be a problem. The bye weeks begin next week. Brian will be without Rome Odunze in week 5, without Justin Jefferson in week 6. So with the players on this roster right now, who's going to get the start next week?
Sure. So, there's no real good options here. I think for the wide receiver question for next week, it has to be Josh Downs or Thornton. Now, you don't like this Thornton line of only 2 targets in this one for 11 yards. It does score a touchdown, which kind of saves his day. But the usage is just not there. I think you have to go Josh Downs next week just because, Mitchell for the Colts had a really boneheaded play in that game where he tossed the ball behind him tossed the ball in front of him before he got into the end zone. So maybe that opens up more opportunities for Josh Downs in this offense. Maybe Mitchell goes into the doghouse for a couple weeks. That would be a plus for Downs. But there's no really good options here. I mean, he's kind of in the same boat of a lot of teams where just the depth is not there. Maybe you can get Chris Rodriguez in there in the flex position. Just hope that he really wrestles that role away from who's that guy's name? Krosky, whoever.
Krosky Merritt, yep.
Krosky Merritt and McNichols. Maybe he becomes the feature back there, but might be a couple weeks away. I think next week you got to go Josh Downs.
Interesting tidbit to note, Rico Dowdle is on the bench. Chuba Hubbard was down to 51% snap percentage this week, his lowest of the season. Not playing very well. Rico Dowdle worked in a little bit more. He played more snaps this week than any other week. So interesting name to note, potentially changing backfield situation in Carolina. Okay, third matchup. Let's keep this thing moving. We have the Curtis Bay Chum Buckets. Another solid performance, 142.8 over the Penn Prairie Wolves. Jake's team falls to 1-3, scoring just 99 points in this one. It's the Chum Buckets, who are now 2-2, winning 2 straight, the number 4 team in the standings, getting massive production out of Josh Jacobs here in this one. He's over 13 fantasy points for 3 out of 4 games. He destroys in an excellent matchup against the Cowboys, scoring 29 fantasy points. You've got Puka Nacua, who destroys everybody, 15.
What can you
Crazy.
say about him? I mean, I don't. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
17 or more fantasy points in every game this year. He is on pace to break all kinds of volume records early on in this season, all kinds of yardage records, 170 yards. He does get his first touchdown of the season, which is amazing that he is by far the number one receiver in fantasy football. Best player in fantasy football, I should say.
Yeah.
Xavier Worthy, nice to see, comes not nice to see for us against the Ravens, but does come 5 for 8 in his first game back this year.
And he did look good. He did look good.
Did.
So no worries there for Worthy.
Also looking good is a guy that we talked about a lot last week, Jake Ferguson, now with CeeDee Lamb on the shelf. We talked about volume. We talked about him potentially being a top 5 tight end while CeeDee Lamb is out. He was exactly that this week, tight end number 5, after 2 straight weeks of tight end number 4. So he is an elite fantasy option, the number 2 tight end right now in fantasy. Chase McLaughlin, worth noting. You love a good kicker, Adam. 18.5 points for the Buccaneers. On the bench, really interesting running back names to note. You've got changing backfield situations for the Texans. Woody Marks, 25.9 fantasy points. Yeah. In a lot of leagues where he's not owned this year, this week, Adam, he is going to be a top waiver target. Josh has the luxury of having Woody Marks on his team. 17 for 69, gets into the end zone. He's been over 4 yards a carry for the last 3 weeks. He's performing a little bit better than the veteran Chubb, and he looks to be taking over this backfield. Also, R.J. Harvey, another name to note.
Yeah.
He got involved in this game last night, one of the 2 Monday night games, in a big way. Now, they had a big lead, and he got more work late in the game, but there was a report out of Denver saying that they may try to make J.K. Dobbins more of the closer and get R.J. Harvey more work early. He got 14 for 58 in this game. So 2 really nice running backs to have on the bench at this point. So how about the beast, Adam? Who is your beast for week 4?
I mean, the easy one's to go Puka again, but we'll go away from him just because he's gotten so much love and, best football player in the universe. But let's go Josh Jacobs. You really like to see this. It was really a bounce back from week 3 in a tough matchup against Cleveland. Only 65% snap count, but when he was on the field, he was carrying the ball and catching the ball. So now running back number 7 on the season, had 86 yards in this one's 2 touchdowns in that high-scoring game against Dallas. What's to be said? The Packers offense runs through Josh Jacobs, and it seems like the passing game's kind of supplementary to Josh Jacobs. Some of the highest carries that he had on the season. He did have 23 in week 2, but you love to see it. He seems like that player that you draft that is not going to woo anyone when you pick him, but he just performs kind of like James Conner in that regard, but still doing well. The snap percentage is a little low, but he produces when he's on the field, so you got to keep rolling him out. He is my boom for week 4.
Absolutely. Your beast and your boom, huh? Okay.
Whatever.
Well,
boom,
he will be.
I thought it was boom and buzz, but beast and buzz. I've been saying boom. I will get better at that. Please forgive me.
You're doing fine. You will not be rolling him out in week 5. He is on bye, but
True.
He does return to a run of very plus matchups, beginning with Cincinnati.
Yeah, we just saw that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good situation for the veteran Jacobs. Okay, let's move over to the bust.
So I'm going to go with Alvin Kamara because I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. 73% snap carries, lowest of the season. Snap percentage is lowest percentage of the season. 15 carries, 70 yards. So did do a lot with the opportunities that he had. But it only has 1 touchdown on the season. And there are reports now that he might be on the move, with the Saints not being competitive this year. Aging player that, running back at 30, and, they have Kendre Miller, back there, who looked actually pretty good in this game as well. could be a player on the move. Only 9 points in this one. Now running back number 26. He is my bust for week 4. Just a bad offense that he's on. And maybe a change of scenery will be welcome for Alvin Kamara if he can go to a more balanced offense.
For sure, and even if they don't trade him, I get I kind of have the sense that the Saints do want to actually be more of a running team than a passing team. I kind of just get that sense. Kendre Miller, you mentioned, he did look good. I saw a lot of him on red zone, looking very explosive there. There's always going to be a role. As long as Kamara is on this team and healthy, there is always going to be a role for him. His passing work is certainly something that he excels at. He did catch 4 of 5 passes in this game. He's had a 6 for 6 in the passing game earlier this year against San Francisco. But I agree with you. I think that certainly is a little bit of a concern. Definitely a player that you would say the arrow is pointing down as opposed to up.
Well, let me pose this question to you real quick. He gets traded to, I don't know, the Chiefs. What does his value become if he gets traded to the Chiefs? I mean,
I don't know that I see it as that big of a boost for him.
Okay.
Honestly, I think the Chiefs have not way more, but they have a few more playmakers, I think, than the Saints do at this point in time. You're going to get Rashee Rice back. Mahomes is proving that he's got a lot of guys in that offense that he can make fantasy viable, let alone NFL viable. So I don't know that the Chiefs excite me too much, but there may be another few teams out there that could certainly benefit from a guy like Alvin Kamara.
Washington, good.
That would be a good one. That would be a really good one.
Yeah,
I think I would like that a lot better, for sure. Okay, who are we talking about? We're talking about Josh's team. So.
Yep.
And that was your bust. So We're now on to the question for Josh. So he dropped his first 2 weeks this season, but he's now won 2 in a row, both of them in blowout fashion, and this team suddenly looks really good. So I guess I just want to get your thoughts generally about this team. Like I said, 2 very down weeks to begin the season, and then 2 kind of huge weeks in weeks 3 and 4. So what do you think of this roster? What do you think of Josh's prospects? Especially with those running backs on the bench that I mentioned, whose arrows are pointing up.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the stronger teams. I would say top 3 in the league. I'm not really worried about the 2 losses on the front end. Just looking at the talent, you have Hurts, Jacobs, Kamara, Nakua by himself. I mean, he can carry you to a victory any week. 29, that's a nice number, but I could see him scoring 40 points in a week. Like, multiple touchdowns, 20 targets, that sort of thing. So you now have Worthy back as well, Jake Ferguson, as we mentioned as well. So I'm not worried about it. And then on the bench, I mean, just, RJ Harvey now getting more work, and Marks now leading the Houston Texans in carries. I like the depth. I like the skill position players. I love all of it. Definitely arrow pointing up in one of the more dangerous 2-2 teams in the Beltway Wars Invitational.
Okay, moving over to the losing side, just 99 points this week for the Penn Prairie Wolves. Jake moves to 1-3. He's the number 11 team. He has suffered more than perhaps anybody with injuries already this year. He had Cedric Tillman leave this game with an injury, who we'll get into a little bit later. But I guess looking on the bright side, does get 23 fantasy points out of Christian McCaffrey. We've come to expect it game in and game out. He gets a nice day. He starts the rookie for the Giants, Jackson Dart, gets 19 fantasy points in that game. This is, of course, the fill-in for Joe Burrow, who was injured a couple weeks ago. So kind of a nice move there to get the start to Jackson Dart, and he does pretty well in his debut. Didn't throw a lot, but was active on the ground with 10 carries, 54 and a touch. Kind of mediocre the rest of the way. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba, this is his floor, 11 points.
Yes.
I think this is very clearly his floor, but only 5 targets in this game for the Seahawks. You do get Stephon Diggs with 100 yards. Maybe there's some offense there, but that's a game that the Patriots scored 42 points. So maybe that's more the outlier than the norm. But he could be kind of a touchdown dependent wide receiver there. And then really nothing going on the bench. I mean, I guess DeMarcado with 9, but just 2 carries and 2 targets, so not a lot of work. McNichols, nothing. Sampson, negative. Brian Robinson, kind of a Hail Mary backup to Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
Sam Laporta, 5. Aaron Jones on IR for this team. So really futile. Not a whole lot of options here, Adam, for your beast this week.
I'm going to go with Jackson Dart, though. The numbers in terms of NFL quarterback is not pretty. Only 13 completions for 111 yards. But the running, and this is the thing, it's kind of the same thing with Justin Fields. It doesn't really matter how well he throws the ball because the rushing ability really saves the day and puts his floor a little higher. He has New Orleans next week, which I think, kind of middling, but the rushing floor is just the important thing here. I don't see that changing at all. I think it makes the Giants offense more dynamic to have a running quarterback. That's why I think they went to him, instead of Russell Wilson or even Jameis Winston, who is also there as well. He's my beast this week just because we're seeing what his kind of line's going to look like. I could see, him being an 18, 19 point quarterback the rest of the way just because of that rushing ability.
Yeah, it definitely brings that floor up significantly compared to a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who's on Jake's bench. When it comes to that rushing ability versus not, in today's fantasy, that makes a huge difference in this league. Okay, well, you've got plenty of options to choose from for the bust with just 99 points, so pick one.
So, I know we talk about it every week, but we just got to. I mean, A.J. Brown, just, 1.7 points. He has 9 targets this one, but only 2 receptions for 7 yards. It makes no sense what his role is in the offense. It's kind of like an identity crisis. It's like they don't know how to use him. It's like they've forgotten to use him. Devontae Smith's also getting, a little more work than I thought he would, but this is just concerning. I mean, with the amount of draft capital you spent on him in the second round, mind you, now wide receiver number 48, he's had 2 games of 1 and 2 receptions. I mean, that is not something that you need. I think that week 3 kind of showed that is the outlier of his value. He has Denver this week, which is a tough defense as well. Not looking good. Snap percentage is still good, but even when he's on the field, they're asking him, I guess, to block, and they're not getting him the ball. So he is my bust for week 4.
Yeah, after this game, A.J. Brown tweeting, if you're not welcomed, not listened to, quietly withdraw. Don't make a scene, shrug your shoulders, and be on your way. So a lot of people interpreting this as requesting a trade. Head coach Nick Sirianni came out and addressed this with the media. He was certainly asked about that tweet. Sirianni struggled to answer the question a little bit, but ultimately kind of gave a canned answer, something along the lines of, I won't question his work ethic. I won't question his ability to, or his desire to be a good teammate. So certainly something it might be a squeaky wheel gets the grease situation next week.
Yeah.
But they do have a tough matchup, though. They do have Denver, so likely Pat Surtain going to be shadowing A.J. Brown next week, so a tough situation for that Eagles offense. They're 4-0, which is the weird part, right? They're winning.
They're not going to have any reason to trade him, so it's kind of like he's kind of stuck where he is.
That's very true. All right, well, the trade that we talked about earlier to open the show wasn't the most... Maybe it was the most interesting move, but there was another interesting move that Jake made this week. He spent $21 on wide receiver Cedric Tillman. This is a player that you, Adam, drafted in round 14 and dropped after week 3. It was kind of a late week, right? It was the second run of waivers, right? All the guys that got dropped a couple days prior. You can then add again on waivers toward the end of the week. So $21. I was pretty surprised by that. Jake actually was surprised that there was not more interest. He texted me that. He went immediately into Jake's flex spot, only to score 1 point before leaving with a hamstring injury. Coach Kevin Stefanski indicated yesterday that it's going to be a multi-week absence
Yeah,
for
he was
Tillman.
placed on IR today.
Oh, he was placed on IR. That's definitely multi weeks for
Yep.
Tillman, 4 at the minimum. So certainly not good news for Jake. So Adam, I guess I want to hand it to you. Give me some thoughts about your decision to drop Tillman, Jake's decision to scoop him up, and then yet another injury for the Prairie Wolves to deal with.
Yeah, so, I mean, my decision to drop him was, the quarterback play is not good. Flacco is not going to push the ball down the field to anyone other than Jared Jeudy. And now, and I saw this kind of coming, they're going to go with the rookie quarterback in week 5. So, rookie quarterbacks are going to lean more on the run. He was the second option in that passing game, maybe even the third option after the tight ends. Just didn't like the trajectory of where that was going. I thought there was better options on the waiver wire. And, Jay picking him up for $21 was kind of head-scratching to me a little bit just because it was after the first round of waivers. I thought you could probably get him, if you wanted to spend some money, like $5, something like that. I don't think anyone was really pressed to get him. So, yeah, I'm just, out the next 4 weeks. I didn't like his trajectory in terms of his role in that offense. And now with the rookie quarterback, it remains to be seen. When he comes back, what's his rapport going to be with Dylan Gabriel there. So that's the reason why I dropped him, and I think it was a little rich to pay $21 for him.
I would agree with that. Okay, moving on to our next matchup. It is the Pasadena Pulverizers, Sarah's team, advancing to 2-2, the number 3 team. It's so interesting. Her and Josh are now 3-4 in the league. They started out 11-12 after a week or two. So how the tables have turned here. 142.3 to 104.7 for the Westminster Wrecking Crew. That's Scott's team. Kind of a disappointing performance here. They're both 2-2. Sarah's number 3. Scott is number 9. So definitely a differential in the standings here. Sarah's team led by 3 main players. It was Pat Mahomes. I don't want to talk about him, but I think we have to.
Yeah.
27 fantasy points in this game, 4 touchdowns against the deteriorating Ravens defense. It was rookie Marion Hampton, the rookie running back for the Chargers, scoring 25 fantasy points. 128 yards on the ground on just 12 carries, got into the end zone and caught 5 passes. So definitely a breakout performance for the rookie running back there. And then it was George Pickens in CeeDee Lamb's absence, another guy that we talked about benefiting from that injury. 8 for 11, 134, and 2 touchdowns in that 40-40 tie for the Cowboys. Other than that, not a lot going on in the starting lineup and not a whole lot going on the bench. It was Hunter Henry on the bench scoring another touchdown. He is the number 1 tight end as we speak. Just 2 for 2, but one of them was a touchdown, which helps his day. So let's start off, Adam. I think there are 3 options to pick from. Give us your beast in week 4.
I think my beast for week 4, just because of how we were talking about last week with handcuffing, the rare wide receiver handcuff, and I think that's going to be George Pickens. Pickens, being the number 1 option there in Dallas, this very high-scoring game, which I don't think really anyone really saw coming with, Green Bay being a pretty good defense. 90% snap percentage, you're going to see that as well. Most targets on the season, most catches on the season, high yards, 2 touchdowns as well. Now wide receiver number 5 on the season. Did you kind of feel that the Dallas offense kind of worked better without CeeDee Lamb? Because that's how it kind of looked. I mean, Dak Prescott looked really good in this one. And it seemed like without CeeDee Lamb on the field, they didn't need to force a ball to one player. It looked like a very, well-run machine for Dallas in this one. So you love to see that. He has a plus matchup against the Jets. He has Jets, Carolina, and Washington in the next 4 weeks. You got to start him as long as CeeDee Lamb is out, and you might start him even with CeeDee Lamb coming back, as you're expecting a ramp-up period for Lamb. So he is my beast for week 4.
Yeah, and to do it even against the Green Bay Packers defense, who we think is good, but maybe we're not so sure anymore. But regardless, still a very nice performance. He is over 15 fantasy points in 3 straight games, so huge numbers for George Pickens, the former Steeler. Okay, let's take a look at the bust this week.
So my bust is going to be Keenan Allen, now wide receiver number 13. Does have his highest snap percentage of the season, but only does that with 5 receptions for 37 yards. His first 3 weeks had double-digit points. Now kind of comes back to earth in this one. Just kind of a weird offense, I would say. With Johnston really being the lead there. You also have Ladd McConkey there, who we will talk about, but didn't do anything on this game. You're expecting more in this plus matchup against the Giants. You were expecting a little, a higher scoring game. Not what you want to see with Keenan Allen now. Like I said, wide receiver number 13. Just a weird week. I don't think that this is indicative of things to come, but he is my bust for this week, just based on what his week 1 through week 3 looked like.
I would agree with you. I am surprised, though, that you did not go Chris Olave, who threw an interception.
I was going to say that. That was very funny. That was like the most hilarious. That's so funny. The guy,
very strange play call.
The defensive player made an outstanding play on that throw, though.
It's true.
So, yeah, but yeah, I have a little thing in my heart about Chris Olave. So.
Yeah, that was like a Todd Monken, like, just run it with Henry. No, we're going to do this Philly special, right? Went with the Philly special there, and Olave chucked it into the hands of a defender. Okay, moving on to the question here for Sarah. We've talked the last couple seasons about Patrick Mahomes and his well-documented struggles to hit that 20-point fantasy mark on a consistent basis. This year, he's reached 22 in 3 of 4 games. He was the 6th quarterback taken on draft day. He's now QB number 3 after 4 weeks. So assuming health, are you buying or selling Patrick Mahomes as a top 6 quarterback where he was drafted come season's end?
I'm buying this completely, and I kind of want to talk about this because we kind of talked about week 1 and week 2, how he kind of used his legs to elevate his floor. Not in this one. Not in this one. He didn't run the ball at all. And he still was able to put up 4 touchdowns against the Ravens defense. Also, looking at his next 4 games, Jacksonville, Detroit, Las Vegas, and Washington. You're not sitting him in any of those games. Also, Buffalo as well, which is probably going to be a very high-scoring game. So you are ride or die with Patrick Mahomes. I am buying that he is a top 6 option going forward.
Okay, let's move over to Scott. The 2-2 Westminster Wrecking Crew get the loss in this one, 104.7. Rough day at the office for Scott and his team. Really suffered from poor performances from a lot of guys that you're expecting a lot out of. Well, I'm sure you'll pick one of them, but Chuba Hubbard, 8 fantasy points. We talked about lowest snap share on the season. Jamar Chase, this Bengals offense just looks to be completely out of sorts. They only managed to score 3 points against the Broncos. Brian Thomas continuing to struggle, not hitting 50 yards in this one. Only really being around that 40 to 50 yard mark in 3 straight games for Thomas. Does get good production out of a couple guys here. DK Metcalf gets a touchdown. I believe that's his 3rd or 4th touchdown on the season. It is 3rd, 1 in each of the last 3 games. Kyle Pitts for a 5 for 5, 70 and a touch. And Quinshon Judkins, a guy we've talked a lot about on this podcast, 21 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown there for the Browns. Otherwise, not much on the bench. It was Tyler Algier with 16 carries and a touchdown. That's pretty nice, 11 fantasy points. On the other side of the coin, it was the continued struggles of Ladd McConkey, perhaps the biggest bust in fantasy this year so far. Just 1 fantasy point. His fantasy points have gone down in each of the first 4 weeks. His snap percentage is still great. He's over 90%, but just 1 for 11 in this one on 6 targets is just a huge problem. But let's talk about something happy. Let's talk about the beast for Scott's team.
Yeah, so my beast, and I think we got to start believing, is going to be DK Metcalf. His best performance of the season. I only had 5 targets in this one, but he is that vertical threat that Aaron Rodgers seems to find he had a really nice play to score a touchdown over in Ireland this week against a very tough defense. So, now wide receiver number 15, Scott drafted Chase, McConkey, and Brian Thomas. And right now, DK Metcalf might be the best wide receiver on this roster, just in terms of his situation that he has. Now, he might not be the most talented, but in terms of situation itself, he might be in the best position out of this group. So DK Metcalf, I think we're going to start being a believer. Again, this was another player that a lot of fantasy people were down on going into this year, but he is proving the doubters wrong. 21 points in this one, goes on the bye in week 5, but he is a mid-wide receiver 2, I think, going forward.
Yeah, interesting that his snap percentage ticked down to 79% despite his highest fantasy output of the season. But I guess it's interesting, Adam. I'm looking at the wide receiver depth chart for the Steelers. Can you name me? I'll give you one. I'll give you Calvin Austin. I don't want to embarrass you by not naming Calvin Austin, although I would not have remembered him off the top of my head.
I'm not going to cheat.
Give me another wide receiver on this team. I don't think you can name one.
I'm trying real hard.
Yeah. Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, and Ben Skoranek.
Oh, Scotty Miller.
Receivers. There you go, Scotty Miller. All right, but I agree with you on the DK Metcalf call. Let's flip it over and give me a bust.
So my bust for this week is going to be David Montgomery. He kind of goes back to what his role was. And, you thought that it was going to be a little more expanded role, being that guy in between the tackles for the Lions, where Jahmyr Gibbs is more of the catching back and the outside run sort of deal. But in this one, just nothing happening. Again, against a very tough defense. Only 9 carries for 12 yards, nothing going on, no receptions at all. This is kind of how he's going to play each year, or this season, rather. It's going to be kind of hard to kind of tell when he's going to start. Do you start him in plus matchups and then kind of sit him in not so plus matchups? I mean, week 5, Cincinnati. I mean, a team that cannot score. The Lions should be heavy favorites, should get ahead in this one. They sit Jahmyr Gibbs, and then he gets all the work. So you might see, closer to 12 to 15 points for David Montgomery in week 5. But then week 6, Kansas City's defense playing a lot better, was able to bottle up Derrick Henry, with Baltimore. So do you sit him in that one? I think it's just going to be kind of hard to tell where you can start him and where you can't. So he is my bust for week 4.
Yeah, in the game for just 20 snaps in this one, his lowest by just a little bit, but his lowest on the season. So Scott must have agreed with us about a guy that, again, we've talked a lot about, Quinshon Judkins. We talked about him last week. He did get the rookie into the flex spot, correctly choosing to bench Ladd McConkey. Young Ladd, by the way, had just 1 catch this week, but it wasn't due to game script. He continues to be outshined by teammates Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
So Adam, is Ladd, do you agree with me that he is the bust of the draft, and is he going to turn it around here for the Chargers?
I have seen nothing to show that he's going to turn it around. I mean, it's not to this point yet, but could he be like a later season drop? I mean, it's starting to get to that conversation where, he is not involved whatsoever. I mean, you're kind of like, well, keep him because of the targets, but he does absolutely nothing with the targets. He used to got peppered with targets last year. I mean, just looking at some of his game script last year towards the end of the season, 12, 7, 6, 10, 8, and did a lot with those targets. So, I don't foresee how it gets really any better other than an injury to either Keenan Allen or Johnston. Just really, really disappointing, again, with the draft capital that you spent on him in the second round. And by far, I think it is the most disappointing draft pick in the first 3 rounds.
Hard to argue with that. Moving on to our 5th matchup, we're going to go with Alex and the Owings Mills Ozempics getting the win over Tom's Finksburg Kinks, 126-86 to 104-48. Alex advancing to 2-2, middle of the pack at number 7. Tom dropping this one, moving to 1-3. occupying the bottom of the standings, unfortunately, after 4 weeks. And Alex, had a nice week here. 126, it's not a gaudy number, but it gets the job done. Had Josh Allen, 24 fantasy points. You had Romeo Dobbs, the elusive Packers receiver, pin the tail on the Packers receiver. He does it with 26 fantasy points and 3 touchdowns in this game. Interesting line, 58 yards and 3 touchdowns in this shootout
the
against
red
the Cowboys.
zone target for the Packers, it seems like. It seems like when they get down there and they're throwing, they're looking for him and his big-ass head that he has because he wears that stupid Guardian cap.
Well, speaking of red zone targets, you've got Emeka Buka, maybe more of a down-the-field threat, but it doesn't matter. He's doing it all. He's got 4 touchdowns now after 4 weeks. The rookie, 4 for 10 in this one, but 18 fantasy points. Really a fantastic outing there. On the bench, interesting performance for Jordan Love in that Packers game. A nice quarterback to have on the bench when he can get you 26 fantasy points on the bench. Again, threw those 3 touchdowns to Dobbs. And then Zach Charbonnet, not dead yet, 12 carries for 39 yards in this game and does get into the end zone again, the touchdown vulture, to the chagrin of many an owner of Kenneth Walker III. So that's pretty much everyone that I wanted to talk about. Adam here, he does continue to have Terry McLaurin out, missing this game. It was his first game missed of the season, and I think it sounds like it may be a multi-week absence. At least that's kind of how it felt, so I'm not sure if that is the case or not. But regardless, why don't we talk about the player that you liked a lot? Give me your beast.
So my beast is going to be Josh Allen. Now the number 1 overall player, number 1 overall quarterback. He does have that down week in week 2. That was just kind of a weird game against the Jets, but I think 20 points is his floor, and that's scary because 20 points is kind of the marker for a good quarterback week, but I think that is his floor. He runs the ball, he passes the ball, doesn't really pass the ball too much in this one. I guess it wasn't really the game script to do so, only 22 attempts. But even still, on 22 attempts, he still scores 24 points because of that rushing ability, 45 yards and a touchdown. He is probably one of the best, or I would say him and Lamar are the 2 best fantasy quarterbacks. He's showing it here. There is no stopping. He has New England, Atlanta, next 2 weeks, then his bye. So you're starting him, obviously, and you're feeling really, really good about it. Just amazing player.
All right. A couple options to choose from on the bust side of things. Adam, who's going to be in week 4?
So we're going to go with Derrick Henry. He has that big week in week 1, then a really down week in week 2, has kind of an okay week in week 3, and then just falls off the planet on week 4 as well. You're starting him every week. He's now running back number 19, but he has Houston, which is a tough matchup. They have a good front 7. And now you have Cooper Rush probably starting in week 5. I think that was announced. So he's going to face 8-man boxes. And how much can he do with that? We saw the struggles also with the Ravens offensive line. He doesn't really catch the ball at all. He now only has 4 receptions on the season. You knew that going in. But then he also has the Rams, who is also a tough defense to run against. So, some fantasy experts kind of faded him. I wasn't one of those, but this is not a good sign for Derrick Henry, just with how the offense, all the injuries, Lamar being out really hurts his value. He is my bust for week 4.
Side note, in my keeper league, I did just trade for Derrick Henry this week. Traded Tony Pollard and a second-round pick next year for Derrick Henry, betting on perhaps some better matchups, some hopefully better game scripts at some point this season, because I think we all saw in week 1 he is still a dominant running back. It's just in a sadly to say, a bad situation right now for the Ravens. All right, well, this was a really nice comeback win for Alex and his Owings Mills Ozempics. We talked a lot last week about the wide receivers for this team, and I kind of want to talk about them a little bit more again. Terry McLaurin, again, was on the shelf, as we mentioned. Marvin Harrison, despite looking horrible for most of this game, he did finish with a season high in targets and receptions. He caught a touchdown. Emeka Egbuka scored his 4th touchdown in as many games and went over 100 yards. But the player that I want to just ask you about, because he's interesting. We mentioned the weird stat line, 58 yards, 3 touchdowns. Romeo Doubs. He scored 3 times. He was a 14th round draft pick in our draft.
Yeah.
Is this a true emergence, or is this typical wide receiver fool's gold for the Packers?
I think it's typical fool's gold. He had some of these games last year, and then he's just completely forgotten about. It's just that Packers offense. It's like you have Matthew Golden, you have Dobbs, you have Jalen Reed's hurt, but you also have Wicks there as well. Tyler Kraft's going to get his looks. It's just one of those things where it's hard to trust week in and week out whether you can start him or not. He's not going to have to worry about that next week because they're on bye. But, I mean, it's just a little too boom or bust for me, and it's kind of hard to really tell if this is true or not. I'm leaning on the side of this being an outlier than a general trend.
Okay, well, let's move to the losing side with the Finksburg Kinks. 1 and 3, as we mentioned, just 104 points this week, and really struggled across the board here. From the top down, from Geno Smith's 9.7 to Chase Brown's 8, Tedero McMillan's 8, Alec Iobanner's 5, TJ Hawkinson's 5. Maybe a bright spot for Jordan Addison, returning from suspension into a high-volume role, 4 for 8 for 114 yards. Him and Jefferson were both very good in this game. Got some strength out of the Eagles' defense in a win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but not really a whole lot else that was notable. Cortland Sutton did have a nice game, scored a touchdown on 5 catches in this one, so decent game there. And then on the bench, again, not a lot to talk about. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, just 7 rushing attempts in this game. Like you're relying on him to potentially be like kind of the guy there. We talked about Chris Rodriguez had a much better game. Jaden Daniels missed this game, so Tom had to, start Geno Smith again with Daniels on the bench. Man, it's dire straits right now for this very young team, but Is there a bright spot in the starting lineup right now?
So the bright spot that I kind of want to talk about is Jordan Addison. His first action of the season, 96% snap count, so he was on the field early and often. There was some concerns about, they traded for Adam Thielen. What would his role be when he comes back? He is entrenched as the second option behind Justin Jefferson, it seems. That downfield threat also as well. So, arrows pointing up for him. Does have a couple of tough matchups, Cleveland, Philadelphia, coming up. But, you like to see that coming back from an injury. There was no, ramp-up period. He was on the field. He goes over 100 yards. He is my beast for week 4.
All right, a couple options on the board. Pick a bust this week.
So my bust is going to be Chase Brown. Now, a very hard matchup in this one. But again, maybe, you're looking for any silver linings here. 73% snap percentage in this one. So it kind of differed from last week with the 55%. He is still the guy there. It has to get better. It can't get much worse than this. And I don't think they're really going to be looking at any other options on the depth chart. Samaje Perine is just a guy. Tajay Brooks maybe is an interesting deep flyer, but Chase Brown right now, that whole Bengals offense is just horrible. You have to think maybe that they'll go away from Jake Browning, maybe go to another quarterback just to see if they have anything. It's just bad. It was a bad matchup. It's a bad offense right now. They have Detroit next week. Maybe you can get something going. But for week 4, he is my bust.
Yeah, I see the game script against Detroit and then possibly in week 6 at Green Bay, both of those being game scripts that may not favor the Bengals. And Pittsburgh. Yeah, don't count them out. So potentially some tough game scripts for Chase Brown to work into the offense there.
Yeah.
The struggles continue for Tom across the board. He dropped his third straight matchup, and the last two have been without quarterback Jaden Daniels, who has been hurt. Will this week's return of Jordan Addison, a guy you mentioned, a guy you were impressed with, and the expected return of Daniels this week, if not the week after, will that be enough to turn the tide for Tom to get this thing turned around?
I just think there's way too many question marks on this. Even Saquon is kind of just like he's not living up to his first round draft pick status. Now he still has 15 points. You're starting him regardless, but I'm just kind of interested to get your kind of take on this. He starts Geno Smith in this one, 9 points. Marcus Mariota is out there. It's kind of like an interesting decision that he decided to go to Geno. You know, Geno did have the big week in week 3, so maybe he saw that and was like, good on him. But, you know, Marcus Mariota with the rushing ability as well. Geno Smith does not run, so his floor is a little lower, and we're seeing it here. It's just kind of an interesting decision to start Geno Smith against the Bears in this one.
I think that is a good call. There's certainly other options out there. And if Daniels misses again, Tom may be turning to one of those other options.
I think they are expecting him to play in week 5.
Okay, well, that is good news, certainly, for Tom and his team. All right, last matchup, not one that I've been looking forward to talking about. It's mine. It was Charlie's here, 96-5-8 for the Reisterstown Rockets. God damn it, one of these weeks I'll remember that is the – I keep wanting to say Rock Stars. It was compared to my league low 88.98 points on the losing side. Both of these teams now 2-2. Charlie at number 8, myself at number 10. Very low scoring game. Charlie fortunate to come away with the victory. Lamar Jackson was the rough spot here for Charlie's team, just 10 fantasy points, leaving this game early due to injury and or frustration. It was good production from both Breece Hall on Monday Night Football, 13 points, and Kenneth Walker, 11 points. Not huge gaudy numbers, but enough to get the job done. Good workload for both of those guys in those games. And it was Cam Skattebo on the bench. On the flex spot, 12 fantasy points, 25 carries. Not very efficient, but worked him into the offense in a big way. He certainly is an interesting guy to watch. He runs like a pit bull. You could find a whole bunch, a tank, a couple different comparisons to make there. But does get a lot of struggles. It's the receivers again that are struggling. Nico Collins, Devontae Smith, Zay Flowers all failed to reach 11 fantasy points, and none of these guys scored touchdowns in week 4. On the bench, C.J. Stroud had an okay day. Maybe that's signs to come. Maybe that's an option for Charlie.
Starts against the Ravens next week.
It gets the Ravens. Well, you can't argue with that right now. It was Deebo Samuel with 17 points, and it was the Lions with 21 on the bench for Charlie. The Seahawks did get the start and got 14 points in the defense spot.
Yeah.
So let's go with a beast for Charlie's team in week 4.
So, again, not many two options to really talk about. So I guess we got to talk about Breece Hall, especially with Braylon Allen looking like he's going to be placed on IR for the next 4 weeks with that knee injury. 14 carries in this one, 81 yards, so a nice run, yards per carry. With Allen being out, he's just going to get more and more work, and Justin Fields can't throw the ball. So I'm seeing for the next at least 4 weeks that Braylon Allen is out, that he's going to be 20-plus touches, and arrow's looking up, 25 ranked running back right now, but that arrow is pointing up because of the lack of competition behind him with Allen going out. So he is my beast for week 4.
Again, more than a third of his fantasy points this week coming through the air. So certainly, just like quarterbacks running backs catching passes is your other fantasy cheat code, your fantasy hack there. Okay, let's. You talked about it. There's some options here on the other side of the coin. Who's your bust?
So again, a lot of options here. Let's go Jawan Johnson. Kind of progressing downward. in terms of fantasy points: 11, 13, 8, and 4 in this one. Now tight end number 7 on the season. I think that just comes from the inconsistency from the quarterback position. Spencer Rattler is not the future for New Orleans. They're going to go to Tyler Schlout at some point during this season. Just a really disappointing day. 90% snap count, lowest targets and lowest receptions on the season. Maybe it was just the Bills playing him very well, taking him away. But I could foresee this continuing just with how bad that Saints offense is. They're going to be in positive game scripts, so that is a plus. But he is my bust for week 4, especially looking at his first 3 weeks.
Yeah, interesting to note that both backup tight ends Foster Moreau and our old friend Taysom Hill have been cleared to return to practice after both recovering from knee injury. So those guys coming back into the fold. Taysom Hill, we know they like to work him in interesting ways. So we will see if that results in a decline in playing time, frankly, for Juwan Johnson.
Yep.
Okay, well, I did want to ask you about an interesting, potentially questionable lineup decision that Charlie made here. It didn't hurt him. He won the game, but Charlie did choose to leave Deebo Samuel on the bench this week.
Yeah.
Not only has Deebo looked like the best receiver for the Commanders so far this season, but his main competition, Terry McLaurin, did not play in this one. Deebo did outscore all 3 of the starting receivers for Charlie's team. So in hindsight, it's 2020, but do you question that decision given the opportunity with McLaurin on the bench to bench Deebo in week 4?
Well, it's kind of interesting because, you're looking at some of these wide receivers. The main one I'm kind of thinking about is Devontae Smith versus Deebo Samuel. But Devontae Smith, had a 16-point week last week. So it looked like he was the clear number 1 option in that passing attack for Philadelphia. While looking at Deebo Samuel, he had 3 points last week. So the kind of the trends there, I think, led, especially me, because I think I said I would have benched Deebo for Cam Skattebo just to get him on the field. So I think it was just sort of the trends. I'm not really questioning it too much just based on what week 3 looked like. But again, now it kind of brings you, another option here that you could maybe throw in there. Maybe slide him in for Devontae Smith based on what the matchup is. Maybe even Zay Flowers now with Cooper Rush rather being the quarterback, that his stock is plummeting as we speak. So you like to see it out of your bench, and now there's some options that you can throw him in the starting spot.
All right, last but not least, my Pratt Street Po' Boys moving to 2-2, scoring just 88 fantasy points this week. Number 10 in the standings. Malik Neighbors can't bury the lead on this one, leaves this game, is done for the year. Another gruesome knee injury, tore some ligaments, ACL included. Really rough for the second year, bright spot for the Giants offense, and very sad for my fantasy team. Caleb Williams, talk about sadness. After the great week 3, he comes back down to earth with 11. So unfortunately, the sort of second year growing pains for Caleb Williams continue here in week 4. Bright spot a little bit. Again, trying to find silver linings on this team right now. Travion Henderson gets into the end zone for the first time on the season. He caught 2 balls, baby steps, as they say. Did have the lowest snap percentage he's had still on the season. It was a weird game script. The Patriots went up big, but somehow just did not. They were so efficient that they didn't actually need to run a whole lot of plays in this game. But otherwise, you're going to have a lot of bust opportunities to pick from. T. Higgins really struggled. The Bengals offense continues to struggle. On the bench, again, I've picked the wrong quarterback. I think 3 of 4 weeks.
You have 3 of them.
Justin Fields. I do have 3 of them. It should have been Justin Fields getting the start with 27 points on the bench. Would have been the play there last night on Monday Night Football. Not very good through the air, but it's that rushing ability, 81 yards and a touchdown, including a 2-point conversion on the ground for Fields last night. And then a whole lot of nothing. Fannin, Turpin, Kupp, Tootin, not much going on. Jaylen Warren was the late scratch in this game before the 9:30 start in Ireland. He misses this game and may have been Wally pipped, may have had his job stolen out from under him. Despite his highest workload of his career last week, he misses this game and gets, just
passed.
Not good for Warren.
Yeah.
Not good.
No. Yeah.
So anyway, give me.
Did you want to take a moment of silence for your team? Is that what you're trying to do?
Not really, and frankly, there's really nobody to choose as a beast other than Amon-Ra St. Brown. I feel like that's probably who you're going to want to talk about here.
Yeah, I mean, there were some concerns about new offensive coordinator at the start of the season. Is his role going to continue to be what it was last year? Well, that question is answered through 4 weeks, 22 points, 7 for 7, perfect on the day. 2 touchdowns as well. Now the number 2 ranked wide receiver in fantasy football. And then look at his matchups: Cincinnati, Kansas City, and Tampa Bay. So, high scoring games other than Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's just dreadful, so he'll get his work in. Feel very good about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he is the steal of the draft thus far, getting him in the second round. Now wide receiver number 2, like I mentioned. So he is my beast for week 4.
That certainly may be a consolation prize for me. Best steal of the draft. I do like that. Okay, well, pick a bust. Any bust.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be T. Higgins. I don't know how he's usable going forward with Jake Browning being the quarterback. 6 targets to this one, 3 catches. Even Jamar Chase couldn't really get on the same page as Browning. Saw a little frustration as well on the bench, so it's just bad. Every single Bengals player, you could make an argument where you're benching them. Maybe Jamar Chase just because of the being the number 1 overall pick, you're keeping him on the field, but these 2 and 3 options just aren't viable right now. And this is what kind of scared me a little bit about T. Higgins. He was kind of forgotten sometimes with Joe Burrow even being there. He is completely forgotten about with Jake Browning. This is probably 5 to 6 points a game is probably what you're looking at for T. Higgins with Jake Browning as the quarterback. And, there's just really no positives to be seen for T. Higgins. So he is my bust for week 4.
Hard not to be. Wide receiver 59 on the season for Higgins. I was watching this game very closely, of course, locked in a tight, low-scoring battle last night. And every time the Broncos scored, I said, oh, man, that's good for T. Higgins. They're going to need to be throwing. They're going to need to be throwing.
Yeah.
The only problem is if you don't have a quarterback that can throw, junk time doesn't do you any good. So I don't think he really did not add to his point total in the second half very much at all. Just 3.5 fantasy points.
It is kind of crazy that the Bengals didn't draft Sanders in the 4th round, just with Joe Burrow's injury history and how their team completely collapses when Joe Burrow's out. Maybe you could have a spot starter there. That's just kind of an interesting note to me.
Yeah, well, he probably told the Bengals he did not want to play behind.
Well, he don't have a
Joe
choice in that.
He wanted a chance to start. He wasn't considering the injury factor there for the Bengals, I think.
Or the Ravens.
Or the Ravens.
Because he'd be starting right now.
That is factually probably correct there, Adam. Well, anyway, my team really seems to have spent all of its fantasy karma on the narrow, low-scoring victory last week. My punishment, a season-ending injury for the sensational Malik Neighbors, my first-round pick.
That's unfortunate.
And then, of course, the early morning knee injury scratch for Jaylen Warren, who was just starting to emerge like we talked about.
Yeah.
The good news, I guess, is that I'm 2-2. It could be worse, but should probably be 1-3. So given the state of this team, it's been a sinking ship here. Do you think I'll be able to keep the SS Po' Boy afloat in these stormy seas?
So I think it comes down to 2 things for your team. Can Keon Coleman become a guy in Buffalo? That offense is humming right now. Can he really wrestle that role away from Shakir in that offense? He's a very talented player. They picked him in the first round. He should be used more. So I think you definitely need more out of him if you want to be successful going forward. And then the second thing is you're going to need to pick the right quarterback. That's just going to come to it. And I think just with the injuries that you do have, you're just going to need to pick the highest upside guy and just take a chance and just say, hey, Justin Fields, not a good NFL quarterback, but runs the ball. I think that's just like you're going to have to eat the games that he has 7 points, just so you might have the opportunity where he scores 30, because that is possible with Justin Fields with the amount of times he rushes the ball. So I think it really actually just comes down to that. Can you pick the right quarterback consistently and, kind of eliminate some of these, 10, 9-point games from that quarterback spot?
I agree with you on both counts there, both of those keys. Hopefully, I will try to do better next week. All right. Well, Adam, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to give me the matchups for week 5 in the Beltway Wars Invitational. But we should say in the meantime that week 5 is the beginning of bye weeks. We have the Atlanta Falcons on bye. As we mentioned, Dustin's team might suffer a little bit, might have a little bit of a weak performance against your team next week, Adam.
Yep.
We've got the Chicago Bears on bye, so Odunze, Caleb Williams for me. I'll at least not have to pick from Caleb Williams this week. He'll be on the bench. The Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers are all on bye in week number 5. So, Adam, let's close it down and give me the matchups for our league next week.
So in week 5, the Union Bridge Badgers are going against the Berlin Banshees, 2-2 and 3-1, respectively. Owings Mills Ozempic at 2-2, going against the Timonium Neon Tubes, 2-2 as well. Prince Street Po Boys, 2-2, going against the Pasadena Pulverizers, 2-2. There's a theme here. Penn Prairie Wolves, 1-3, going against the Westminster Wrecking Crew at 2-2. The Reisterstown Rockets at 2-2, going against the Columbia Cloud College, trying to get back from their first loss of the season at 3-1. And the Finksburg Kinks, 1-3, against the Curtis Bay Chum Buckets at 2-2. So that is our week 5 slate.
All right. Well, with that, this has been the week 4 recap on the Beltway Wars Invitational. We will see some of you at the Ravens game on Sunday as we watch Cooper Rush attempt to be a tenth of what Lamar Jackson is on a regular basis. We will see how that goes. So with that, good luck in week 5, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening and your support. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify.